Good afternoon. I'm going to call to order our meeting today. I'm chair of the committee, Cam Gordon, and I'm joined today by council members Goodman, Bender, and Schrader. We're a quorum of the committee, and so we can conduct our city's business. Glad that you guys all made it. We've got two items on our consent agenda. We have a public hearing, and then we have one piece of unfinished business. I'd like to take up the consent agenda first. The first consent item is release of notice of funding availability for our housing stabilization pilot program. And the second is referring to staff subject matter of an ordinance amendment related to the Summit House housing improvement area. Would anyone like to pull any of those for discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. That motion carries. Then we'll go on to our public hearing item. This is a land sale for the Missing Middle Housing Pilot Program, and this is land sales, I guess we could say. And we're going to have Kevin give us a presentation. And is it Kevin Canasi or Canasi?
Canase.
Canase. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Gordon and members of the committee. I come before you today with an update about our Missing Middle Housing Pilot Program and land sale and funding recommendations as a result of an RFP that we conducted earlier this year for this program. Before I talk about the RFP, though, I want to highlight what we're trying to achieve with the program. So we're trying to achieve four kind of primary things that relates directly to goals set out in our 2040 comprehensive plan. The first of which is increasing the production of affordable housing. Thank you. Increasing the production of affordable housing and creating a diversity of housing options. So missing middle housing types tend to be more affordable, and they also allow people with varying needs to have housing options within the city that currently don't exist. We're also able to leverage the funding that we're providing through this program to create additional units within the developments. So our program is proposed to fund affordable housing units within larger developments. And then the developers can leverage those privately owned sites that they're allowed to build on to build housing in communities which doesn't have or do not have as many affordable housing units. Our second goal is focusing on outcomes with an equity lens. So looking at that, we're looking at funding developers that either have a history of addressing racial disparities in homeownership and housing, or those that partner with organizations that have a focus on serving BIPOC communities. And then we're also looking at funding developers that demonstrate equitable outcomes in their construction contracts that they're doing, or who have a BIPOC representation on their board. Our third item that we're looking at is single-family homes being less dense. We're trying to increase the amount of density that we have. So 45% of units in the city are single-family homes, but they take up about 70% of the lots that actually exist in the city. And when we're looking at proposing missing middle housing, these type of units tend to be kind of on a unit-by-unit basis, having smaller footprints, which allows us to increase density on single-family lots. It also allows for more residents to live in the city, which then those residents can contribute to the tax base, visit local businesses, and then also spend money on goods and services within the city. And then our final goal is increasing housing that has features that meet different community needs. So looking at that, we incentivized or prioritized developments that provide more bedrooms, so like 3+ bedrooms. Developments that have sustainable designs, either incorporating sustainable design features or committing to do green certification through different sustainable programs. And then proposals that could be replicable on other sites for the city. So we looked at projects that could serve as a demonstration for future city sites. So the program has two applicable program income limits depending on if it's rental or home ownership. So on the rental side, we're requiring that developments that are funded serve 20% or the units that they have 20% of which would be serving 50% AMI households. So for a family of four, that would be a household making at or below 50% of area median income. On the ownership side, we're requiring that at least 10% of units serve 80% AMI households. So what that would mean is a family of 4 has to make at or below $75,500. And what that looks like when you're looking at either the purchase price or the rents that are being charged, on the ownership side, that would mean that a family that is buying a home would be buying a home that's no more than $254,500, kind of with some general assumptions about mortgage rates and just the general market. And then what that would translate to on a mortgage that they're paying on a monthly basis would be about $1,500 a month. For the rental side, we're looking at 50% AMI rents. So that would be a rent between $875 for an efficiency or studio up to $1,450 for a 4-bedroom unit. And rents couldn't go above that, inclusive of the utility costs. The pilot is providing funding based on demonstrated need, and it's only to the applicable affordable units. So our program would provide up to $70,000 per the affordable unit that we're funding, with one caveat that if a project demonstrates a compelling need for additional subsidy, that there would be an eligibility of an additional $25,000 per unit. So that'd be something like a partnership through a nonprofit that provides specialized services or that incorporates additional green features well beyond our requirements. The affordable units that we're funding have to remain affordable for at least 30 years, and on the rental side, that would be secured with a mortgage and note, and then on the homeownership side, that would be secured with a deed covenant of restrictions. And the benefit is that while we're funding the affordable units, and a lot of the proposals that we received, and including ones that we're recommending today, a number of them have both affordable units and then additional units that we're not funding, so we're able to leverage the funding that we're providing to provide more units or incentivize more units to be developed within the city. And then finally, the city council allocated $500,000 for this pilot. And with that, I wanted to kind of talk about sort of the outcome of the pilot and the RFP that we conducted to provide some background before going to the recommendations. So when we conducted the RFP this summer, we received a ton of feedback. People were very engaged, and most of the feedback that we received was generally very supportive. We had an information session that we conducted in late July before the RFP was due with over 100 attendees, and generally speaking, like, people were very engaged and really supportive of this type of program. And as a result of that RFP, we received 21 applications requesting over $5 million to fund 169 units. And one thing to point out with this is this was the largest and most diverse pool of applicants that we've received for any of our funded Minneapolis Homes development programs. So that was something that was also great to see from this. And as a result of the RFP, we did receive a couple of proposals that, while they met the requirements of missing middle, they also complied with our Minneapolis Homes Development Assistance Program that traditionally funds 1 to 4 unit proposals. And because they did meet those requirements, we moved forward a recommendation to City Council in December that you approved for 2 projects. And now I wanted to touch on our recommendations that we are bringing forth to you today. So we're recommending 3 separate projects throughout the city that in total produce 50 units of housing, 28 of which would remain long-term affordable for at least 30 years. We're recommending that we use our Minneapolis Homes funding to fill the gap. And what this would mean is that the City Council allocated $500,000 to the program, which and the request exceeds our original Minneapolis missing middle budget. But because of the merits of these projects and the outcomes of affordable units, we're recommending we use funding allocated to our existing housing programs to fill that need. This would be achieved by utilizing the home and Minneapolis Homes budgets. Oh, yes, question?
Bender has a question.
Yeah, thank you. I don't want to interrupt, so you could take this question now or at the end, but I am really curious about all of the other applications that you got. And I remember we changed the criteria of this program to only allow redevelopment, if I remember correctly, on vacant lots, not on places that there are existing buildings today. So I still have questions about what we're missing potentially from that policy decision. So I'm excited to hear about the projects we're recommending, and I know it's a very small pool of money, so I don't doubt that these are great projects and should be a priority. But I also, just to inform kind of our path going forward, maybe at the end would welcome a little more information about what are the other applications you saw, or did you hear from interesting projects that don't meet the current criteria that we could continue to think about other ways to support if they do meet city priorities?
Great. I'm happy to answer that question now, actually, if that's okay.
I think this is a good time.
Chair Gordon, Councilmember Bender. So we did actually allow for proposals that were on sites that had buildings that were currently on them. The requirement is that we just couldn't have a loss of net units. We didn't receive proposals that would have proposed to demolish a structure and rebuild units, except for one that we're proposing today.
Did you want to talk a little bit more about all the people who responded to the proposal and what kind of mix there was? I think that was kind of the question, or get back to that later? Or?
Certainly. So we had 21 proposals, a mix from 20 units of housing all the way down to triplexes, and throughout the city on both privately owned sites and city-owned sites. We were really excited about the proposals. It was just that there was a limited set of funding that was available, and that's why we're moving forward with the recommendations that we have today.
And was there more diversity among the proposers than we've seen in the past?
Yes, there was.
Thank you.
Excuse me. So with that, I wanted to touch on our recommendations. So the first one that we have is the Leaf Townhome project. It's a privately owned site. It would be an ownership development that's long-term affordable, 18 units through the City of Lakes Community Land Trust, partnering with Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity, and they're requesting $900,000. Our second recommendation is Lindale Terrace, which is a city-owned project site. So this is the only city-owned site. It would be a rental and townhome development, which is 13 units, 3 of which would be long-term affordable. And the developer is proposing to do an MOU partnership with either Better Futures, Betty's Healing Home, or similar organization, and they're requesting $285,000. And our final recommendation is Solel on 34th. It's a privately owned site. It's a rental apartment development with one commercial space on the ground floor. It would be 19 units, 7 of which would be long-term affordable. And they're proposing an MOU with Minnesota Assistance Council for Veterans. So we had some key learnings from the RFP, which I think might answer some more of the questions. We definitely received significant community interest for these type of developments, and an interest from developers and community in partnering with the city to see them happen. Our city funding is really what makes them feasible and actually able to occur. And our subsidy can be leveraged to help create more additional units. So the next steps we're exploring at this point would be incorporating the missing middle ownership component into Minneapolis Homes Development Assistance, which would allow for 1 to 20 units of ownership development through the RFP instead of 1 to 4 units. And then conducting a housing study next week to talk more about that. And then an additional year piloting the rental program through missing middle.
I just wanted to, hi, Roxanne Young-Kimball, Chair Gordon, Councilmember Bender. We'll follow up with a summary of the proposals that weren't recommended. And I'll also note that about half of the proposals that we received were from developers that didn't really demonstrate readiness. And so we're intending to work with those developers leading up to a future RFP in order to make sure that they're more ready and more able to participate.
And is some of that connecting them with our technical assistance program? Because we have that DTAP.
Yep, DTAP is an excellent resource. Okay. Yes.
Council President Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm happy to follow up separately too, but I was curious if there are other funding sources you're thinking about potentially matching projects with, or other ways that we could consider trying to help support some of these projects in the future.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what we're going to be starting a discussion with council about next week with the housing study session. Yep.
So with that, I'd be happy to take any additional questions. Otherwise, each of the developers have representatives here that would be happy to speak about their proposals.
I don't see any questions here, so why don't we open the public hearing and invite the applicants to come up? I don't know who wants to go first, but.
Thank you. Anybody want to go first?
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Gordon, Gordon, and members of the commission. My name is Chad Dittman. I'm a project manager at Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity. I would have liked to have had our president, Mr. Chris Coleman, here, but he was otherwise engaged with a discussion on housing and diversity with Mayor Carter at this time at our office. But at Habitat, we are all extremely excited about the staff's recommendation for our project, overwhelmed actually with their appreciation and flexibility in bringing additional funds into the Missing Middle program. The Leaf Townhomes project, we think is an extremely significant project. It's not the first, but it's the first in a long time partnership with City of Lakes Community Land Trust that will provide permanent affordable housing in Harrison neighborhood, which is subject to gentrification pressure at this time. The project resides at the northwest corner of Wellington Management's Bassett Creek Valley redevelopment plan. So it is on the forefront of a massive redevelopment project or potential for a project. So we're happy to be in that spot at this time. And turn it over to my friend here.
Thank you, Chair Gordon, council members. Likewise, very appreciative of the recommendation. We like Habitat, I think are really committed to serving much lower incomes than the cap suggested by the program. We've had a lot of intentional conversation with the neighborhood. As many of you are aware, our offices are located just blocks away from the subject site, and as we've been in the neighborhood for close to 10 years, we've seen just rapid escalation of values, a lot of speculation that you all are very well aware of, and see this as a great opportunity to lock in and build in permanent affordability in the neighborhood with a real focus of targeting the home ownership opportunities to the folks that live nearby, working through both the Habitat system and outreach through the neighborhood. I'm really looking forward to our ability to demonstrate that this is something that's worth replication across the city and a model that's not only going to create affordable housing, home ownership today, but via mechanisms that will ensure that future generations of home buyers will have a place to stay here in the city of Minneapolis.
Well, thank you very much both for being here, and send our best to Chris, and let him know that we aren't going to be slighted that it appears his focus is a little more on St. Paul today than on Minneapolis, but we were a great partner with Habitat.
Thank you.
And I really like the land trust model too. I think that's something to follow up on. Is there anybody else here who wants to speak about their project? Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Nick Hoover. I'm the owner of Twin Cities Home Rental, which is a property management and development company. My project will consist of a 3-story, 19-unit mixed use with just under 2,000 square feet of commercial space. The location is at 5200 34th Avenue South. 7 of the 19 units will be dedicated as affordable at 50% AMI for at least the next 30 years. I'm also a Marine Corps veteran, and I will be partnering with MACV for those 7 units. If you're not familiar with MACV, they're a organization dedicated to help veteran homelessness. The project is also near the VA, which I think will be very beneficial for those veterans. I'd like to thank Kevin. I'm extremely excited about the program. This is the first time I've ever well, been approved for any type of grant like this, and my project, frankly, wouldn't be able to move forward without this program. Thank you for your consideration, and please let me know if there's any questions.
Well, thank you very much. I don't see any questions, but really appreciate you doing this and coming forward. And maybe this won't be the last time that you come to work with the city on a project like this. And I'm really impressed with the partnership too with the Veterans Home and with the.
Thank you.
Is there one more? Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Kyle Walton, president of Classic Lake Consulting and Investments. We focus on economic development opportunities in Black and Brown communities. I'm a native Minnesotan, Northsider. Our project on 24th and Lindale is really focused on activating urban infill sites with a replicatable model. We're looking at wraparound services, hence the partnerships with organizations like Better Futures and Avenues for Youth. There are a number of other agencies that we're in conversations and have executed MOUs with, but the desire is to bring forth projects sponsored by people of color in communities of color that demonstrate that developers of color have the capacity to activate in these communities. As you know, rental rates and construction prices don't match, so similar to my brethren who came before me, I want to thank the city for the recommendation of the funding. It is going to be a hodgepodge of capital in order to get this thing across the finish line, but this missing middle funding and the early support from the city has really been instrumental in helping us move the concept forward. Happy to answer questions.
So I have a question. What's the role Better Futures is going to be playing? Are they going to be using this for housing for some of their clients? Or
Yeah,
also
and we haven't selected our final partner. When we responded to the missing middle RFP, we actually responded with a few different sites, and so we submitted MOUs as evidence of the partnerships that we will potentially bring to bear. And now now that we know the site that we'll have, we will be going through some analysis to look at which programmatic partners are best for the site. But your assumption is exactly correct. We want to be a conduit for placement for folks who are coming through and receiving services with Better Futures or organizations like Avenues. The site plan does contemplate a small space for program partners to meet folks where they are versus having to require folks who struggle with transportation and logistics to venture out of the community. The intention is to provide space so that the program partners can come and meet residents, not just of the Lindale Terrace project, but of the greater community in the community.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for being here.
No problem. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Is there anybody else who would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, then I'll close the public hearing, and I'm happy to move approval. Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just really think this is a great result. I really love the design of the Lindale Terrace project, and I love the location of it. I just think it's a really positive thing. I love the retail portion and the partnership with McVie on the project in the 12th Ward. I think it's really impressive, and it's the kind of thing that the city really wants to see done. I've been most involved with the Habitat proposal primarily because it's about 6 blocks from where I live currently in the Bryn Mawr neighborhood. One thing I will say about the gentrification that's happening in Harrison is if we don't do something big, like 18 units of really, truly affordable home ownership, the area will be taken over by market forces in a fairly short time. Art Spaces project is affordable, but there is a market rate project going on basically across the street that will displace people who lived in single family homes. While the developer has been very helpful to those residents, it doesn't get over the fact that they will be displaced and unable to stay in the neighborhood. And so this kind of opportunity to have affordable home ownership in Harrison will hopefully allow us to be able to see the big picture and have something for everyone. If we want to see development in areas without gentrification, we have to be open to a whole mix of different kinds of things. There are rarely sites where you could put 18 townhomes in the city. And this is a really great site in an awesome neighborhood. Really close to downtown on a bike lane. I mean, quite frankly, Glenwood just goes right into downtown. And so I have been happy to be involved with Habitat to get to this point. Councilmember Ellison, I know, is really, I would use the word pumped about this project because he's been in meetings with us and Habitat. So congratulations to everyone who's doing this great work. It's really, really helping us move in a direction that fits the city's overall housing goals.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And hopefully, at least my colleagues and others here can come to the study session that's coming up next week, too, and we can learn more about all of this. Councilmember Schrader.
Sure. I just want to thank everybody that put this together, like from staff all the way to all the developers that can put in a proposal. It's really exciting. You never know what you're going to get when you start a new program, and to have a response like this is just really exciting to have it happen just kind of on all different levels. To one, just have these projects that really fit so many of the city goals, as well as to have other folks that, may not have gotten funding this year, but know about the program and are now thinking about how they can take part next year. So yeah, just very excited about where this is going.
Wonderful. Sounds like a successful pilot. Good work. All those in favor then of approving this item, please say aye. Any opposed, say no. That motion carries. Now we have one unfinished piece of business before us. I'd like to call on Councilmember Schrader for a motion on that.
Well, I'd move to have it deleted from the agenda.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? No. That motion carries. That concludes our business today, so thanks everybody for being here.